Welcome to the Voices of Search podcast, a member of the I Hear Everything podcast network. Ready to expedite your company's organic growth efforts? Sit back, relax, and get ready for your daily dose of search engine optimization wisdom.
Hello, SEOs and marketers. My name is Jordan Koene. Joining me today is Louisa Fhram, SEO director at ESPN, which is a leading sports entertainment brand covering television, sports app, direct-to-consumer streaming services, and much more. Over the past 10 years, Louisa has been mastering the art of SEO both on the agency and in-house side. Today, we're going to be discussing her Brighton SEO topic, as well as the future of SEO and AI. Okay, here's my conversation with Louisa, SEO director at ESPN. Louisa, welcome to the Voice of Search podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
I am thrilled because you're a San Diego native. We're in San Diego.
I am. I'm very happy to be here. Extra happy to be here.
So in your home city, at an SEO conference, talking about something that you know super well. And so give a little background on yourself, what you're currently doing at ESPN, and where we're at right now.
Yeah, so my Spark Notes version of that would be I joined ESPN in August of 2022, so I've been there for a little over 2 years. I moved to Connecticut, actually, where ESPN is headquartered, so California girl in Connecticut. It's been quite a change.
So the sun here is a warm welcome.
It is a warm welcome, especially this time of year, so that's wonderful. But yeah, my main objective of my ESPN in joining forces with that organization was to start the first full-fledged in-house SEO team. So very exciting initiative to kick off, to be, kind of put at the helm of. I have 2 analysts on my team. One of them is based out in Connecticut with me. I have another one in Los Angeles. We have a freelance writer, which has been great to work with in terms of producing really search-friendly utility content and boosting an explainer initiative. And then we also have a very talented product SEO manager that we work with. So we're a small but mighty team, but we handle, all of the content that's being produced on the digital side across all of our sports sections. So all of the different leagues that you love, anything that's being pumped out on the digital editorial side, my team is all about trying to make that content really sync with Google. And I guess we can say, right, in the age of AI, all of the latest, Google things that are going on, we want to make sure that we're on top of it and targeting the right keywords so we can, enhance our visibility to the maximum extent.
Right. And so at ESPN, you have this great luxury of having kind of an endless array of content, right? And in the world where, we're shifting towards AI as a core component of how we do our work, how we do SEO, how are you seeing AI influence the way your team is doing SEO, seeing how AI is influencing the various sources of content that ESPN has access to? How is that playing a role in an ecosystem in a media company as large as ESPN?
Yeah, so a few things immediately come to mind. Something, that I'm going to cover in my talk at Brighton is AI overviews. It's unavoidable. It's a huge topic for all SEOs, but in particular for news SEO strategists, when we need as much visibility as possible in the SERPs, and it's hyper competitive among publishers. AI overviews really do, present, I don't want to call it a threat because that makes it seem like you can't possibly work with it. But it is anxiety inducing, right? To have this, big thing kind of, blocking that visibility that you're, accustomed to with the top stories carousel and with more traditional search results pages. So that's something that's very top of mind for us in news SEO. I know it's a multi-pronged kind of approach to it, though. You don't want to completely dismiss it. So I'm actually going to cover that in my talk of what are the techniques that we're using right now that can best pair with AI overviews. What does it that we're already doing that we can do even more of so that we can hopefully improve our odds of appearing in the carousel that AI overviews has.
Right.
But also, just in general, how can we find other ways to boost our visibility? A big belief that I have of the future of search and where it's going is because of AI overviews, because we can't really rely on the first page of Google the way that we used to, where it's that is the end goal. You get on the first page, you did well, check the box. we're not living that anymore. And I think what AI really does present when it comes to Google search results is, yes, that is still a goal. It's not the only goal. So I think of search now, and I've encouraged my team, to look at it the same way, as a trigger of sorts, right? So you see that something is trending, you see that there's this breakout topic of interest. Search is the trigger, so you know that there's an audience, but it doesn't mean that that is the only pathway, the only platform that you can target with that search-friendly content. So the way that I look at it is, yes, we still, want to maximize our odds of appearing on Google, syncing with AI overviews, but how else can we increase eyeballs on this content? Like, is it whether it's through an app or a newsletter or social media? I mean, obviously there's so many other channels, but that's where I think, SEO strategists, I mean, we've always had to do that. That's always been important. Of course, but I think it's more important than ever to expand your horizons a bit of like, it isn't just about landing on the first page of Google, because that's very unpredictable now. It is. What AI overviews is, and again, I'm going to talk about a lot of this in my talk, but, we don't necessarily have a way to predict what a search result is going to be now. So we can't rely on that. We don't know when it's going to get triggered or how it's going to appear. So we just have to try to, maximize our visibility in as many channels as possible.
So one of the interesting, opportunities that you have with a brand like ESPN is you have these different channels of content. You have these different ways to connect with users and audiences that are trying to consume this content. One of the components in this shift that we're seeing in search, whether it be with AI overviews, different carousels, whether they be for media or other types of channels. Also, I mean, we see more and more video assets showing up in carousels,
Absolutely.
image
That's
assets
another
showing up in
big change.
carousels.
Yeah.
Big changes, right? How do you envision the message of branding and how your brand is perceived in SEO? Is brand SEO now more important because of these changes to the SERP? Is that now a concept that we should be thinking about as SEOs in a different way than just trying to rank in position one? Is it maybe more important to be like brand present for things that are important to your company?
I love this question because I strongly agree with that. I think we are in this age, and kind of going with my other point about we need to, maximize every possible like platform. I think brand recognition and trust, it is a platform in and of itself. I'm a big believer in, Google EEAT, and that is huge for a publisher like us, and especially being the institution that we are that has built up the sort of trust that we have with our fans over decades. That's something I think about in our work every single day. Is that's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility to produce the best content possible. That's why I'm a big believer in utility content, service journalism, giving the fans exactly what they want, because I think that helps you in navigating this AI overview era that we're in. Because admittedly, right, AI overviews are not always correct. That has been widely pointed out. In the press, there are inaccuracies, things will be outdated. And it's like, because of that, and obviously we don't know where it's going to go in the future, but where it is right now as it stands, that's why, publishers, but really, I think any brand should be thinking of, okay, well, if that's going to be kind of wild and out the way that it is, what can we do to be as stable and secure and reliable for whoever our target audience is? So for us, that means giving the fans exactly what they want. I mean, I think about this all the time. I mean, stats are really big with sports fans. So where I work, like little inaccuracies make a big difference. So what we want to do consistently as a brand like ESPN is show, okay, if AI overview is a little bit off, you can come directly to us. So it's a different sort of search, I would say. It's like it's going beyond like just, again, the first page of Google and really keeping up that EEAT. It's more important than ever. So then you can kind of, like work your way around that obstacle.
There's so many things changing in the news space, whether it be sports or more conventional news. And one of the trends that I think we're seeing is that, consumers of news, readers and audiences that are utilizing news content are becoming far more fervent about specific topics or niche areas that are of great interest to them.
Yeah.
Right? They're less maybe interested in the broad news of sports, and And they're much, much more interested in knowing just what happened in this one game or just what's happening with this one player, whether it be from, the fantasy perspective, because now there's a whole craze behind that, or just general trends.
Fan bases ever is in fantasy.
Right? But what it's done is it's created this myopic view. I'm only interested in this one little thing instead of the whole. I'm not interested in all sports. I'm not interested in all baseball. I'm just interested in this one player and what they did in a given game.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that challenge, this trend, this shift? This isn't just happening in sports news. This is happening in all news. And how do you think about that from the SEO lens? How do you ensure that you can go as granular as a single play in a game all the way to what's happening in an entire league or in all of news sports as a whole?
So the way that I look at that and what immediately comes to mind, and it's a huge, huge part of my methodology in search, is I think of the power of questions. And that's something that, I know I've mentioned utility content a lot. It's a huge passion of mine, but I think that's how you meet that need, because people get very granular with questions. And something that I'm always pushing, to my team, but also to the editors and the writers in the newsroom at large that we work with, is simple is not stupid. So whatever your questions are that you're seeing in, whether it's via Google Trends or it's people also ask or these other, portals where you can get content inspiration, you need to listen. So that's what I would say to that is just, and don't be afraid. You can do these bigger, more broad pieces, but you can also do these granular, more specific pieces. I'm all in favor of content in all ways, always. I think you need to broaden your horizons a little bit. And that's something that I'm always encouraging our newsroom to do, is don't dismiss something because whatever that might seem like, well, I'm not interested in that, or that's too, insert adjective here, because you need to listen to your fan base first and foremost. And if the search interest is there, that is why I love a tool like Google Trends and we use it so closely. You need to listen to that, and I think it's really important as much as possible to kind of take personal opinion out of that and listen to the data. And if it's consistently showing, yes, there is that interest there. And in particular in the world that we work in, if there's seasonality, if this is something that people are going to search for every single year at this time during a specific season, you can drive long-term search traffic with that when you write a corresponding piece of content. So those are the types of things that I'm always thinking about. And I really think questions are the answer to what you just proposed. Trying to get in the mind of the fan or your target audience.
I mean, I love what you just said there. I think simple is not stupid is a great quote. It's a great quote.
It really is.
I hope you got it from your mom. We'll talk about that later. Talk about mom later. But on a segue here, on a segue here, because simple is not stupid, and there's so much that we're learning in the SEO world right now. We're in a transitional moment in the SEO community. We're moving from not only a changed landscape in terms of what the SERP is doing, which we've dealt with before, whether it be with answer boxes or knowledge graph. We're changing the SERP in the landscape, or Google's changing the SERP in the landscape. But we're also seeing just a whole new force, a whole new nature of ways in which we do work with AI, as well as utilizing AI to help consumers find what they need.
Yeah.
And so with all this change happening, I think knowledge is the key power to growing and developing our SEO skills. We're right now here at the Brighton SEO conference in San Diego. From this lens of being at a conference, how do you see that adding value to individual SEOs, content marketers, in their growth journey in SEO?
Oh, I think it's huge. Working in-house, I think it's so easy to kind of get caught up, and no matter what the brand is, in what your day-to-day is, whatever your specific targets are on a regular basis. I think it's absolutely essential to reconnect with the bigger industry when you work in SEO. Even if you are an in-house, SEO strategist, where because an agency is a little bit different, you have more of that mix going on. And I think that discussion can take place more frequently. I think it's critical for people to come to these conferences and understand the bigger kind of things that are going on with the mothership, and more importantly, to have that discussion time. Like even last night, it was technically before the conference kicked off because we're in day one, but it was, the kickoff sort of event. And some of the discussions that I had with other SEOs just on the fly about whether it was, AI or if it was, algorithm, shifts, like whatever it might be, you don't get that on a day-to-day basis, kind of being in your own vacuum. So I find that kind of time invaluable. So you can get different perspectives that might open your eyes a little bit. So that's why, in addition to conferences, I regularly read like our industry blogs, like Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, utilize different resources. And even just through like social media, and keeping up with, some of my favorite folks in the industry that way. One of my favorite things about SEO, and I've loved it from the very beginning, is that we don't have gatekeepers here. And that's how I've always felt about it. And I really love that about it, that there aren't people, kind of holding something to like, no, this is mine, I don't want to share it. It's like, I want to get out and I want to talk about this and inspire other people and get their thoughts, because those could very well enhance my thoughts and my perspective on whatever this is. And I think that's a really healthy sort of dynamic for an industry. And I've loved that from the very beginning with that. So can't speak more highly of like these types of opportunities. And, in an industry like ours that is constantly shifting, it's really critical to have, your finger on the pulse of like the epicenter and what's going on outside of your own bubble.
Yeah. No question. And I think there's a lens to this, which is not only are events critical, but it's what you take back to the organization that becomes super important.
Yeah,
right? Because
definitely.
there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of education that you can foster in an environment like this one. There's also great tools and outlets, whether it be industry news, other local events and community. I really think that what you take back is the most important piece to evolving our roles. And so, question for you is, as you're at Brighton this week, and we're exploring new tactics, new ways of doing work, how do you intend on bringing this knowledge back? How do you intend on integrating what you may learn here back into the ESPN organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So something that we kickstarted in the last year on my team, and I thought that the timing of it was optimal because we had built up enough of a base with our newsroom that they were familiar with SEO. As we started, recurring SEO team newsletter, and I love it. We recently shifted it to every other month, putting it out. But it is one of the ways that I try to communicate with our bigger newsroom and our editorial stakeholders about industry updates and really encourage that educational element. And we'll feature different things that are going on in the industry. It could be, like the OG, title tag shifting. It could be a full-on algorithm shift that could have affected us. It could be a wide variety of things. So I think that's going to be a natural place to do a recap of this. That's why, I've been taking notes so far in the sessions that I've been in, and I'll continue to do that over the 2 days, to provide that kind of direct information to people who could really be positively impacted by it. So definitely the knowledge sharing is really big in that way. Yeah. Having, a dedicated session with my team to discuss it, because we are the ones that are in the weeds every single day. So I think it's important to, in addition to that kind of bigger, email, making sure that we have that one-on-one time to see, hey, if they get informed about this, do they have any other ideas? Have they been seeing similar things? And, kind of advancing the conversation in that way. So I would say that. And then, I don't yet know what I'm going to learn. That's why conferences are exciting. Yeah. But based off of what I see, if there are those sparks of inspiration, I am obsessed with training. I believe that training isn't one and done. I think it's an ongoing process. I think there are opportunities for training always, So if I see something at this conference and it's, hey, I think we could do a dedicated session on that. I think we could loop in members of the newsroom. And on our team at ESPN, we've done, basic SEO best practices, but we've also done Google Trends trainings with our editorial folks. So if something else pops up where it's a clear pathway in that direction, I would love to do that too. And I think that takes it to the next level of, beyond even an email. Let's have them workshop something. Let's have them, kind of get in the weeds with it as well. So
no doubt.
Yeah, the possibilities are really endless depending on, what those takeaways are.
Absolutely. Now, I promised you, what's coming next. I promised you in the wrap-up of our questions that I would ask about mom.
I
I have to ask about mom. There's a lot of reasons why. But one of the things that I find really inspiring about your journey, and as I've, we've talked before, I've, read up on your LinkedIn profile and understood, your past work. You've been on the agency side, you've been on the in-house side, you've seen a lot of change in the SEO world. You've managed people. You've been an individual contributor.
Yeah.
You've been in roles that were good and roles that were maybe not so good. And so mom has been there for all these changes. And one of the really special things you shared with me was, a few moments where you just didn't get the role you wanted, or the door that you wanted to have open didn't open. And mom was there to kind of help see through the clouds and understand where you're going, where your direction is in your SEO career.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'd like for you to share with our listeners a little bit about that journey, about some of those moments where, hey, that role didn't happen or that opportunity closed and you went into something else, and how your mom was there to support you in that. And then secondly, I want you to talk about how we're at a really pivotal point right now in the SEO world where so many new roles are opening up. So many new functions are opening up. But even more importantly, the skills and the capabilities that we need to do SEO well are changing.
Absolutely.
How's mom going to be there when all these stages come about?
I love it. Chris Fhram's gonna have her involvement, whether we like it or not. The involved always. No, so yeah, to answer the first part of that, not my mom actually. So for a brief segue, another close friend that I have who is a mentor as well to me. So similar sort of figure, woman, just someone I really look up to. She gave me guidance at one point that I have held on to so dearly, and I think it really connects to this. There's that classic phrase that gets thrown around of everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
And she came and she spoke with, kind of this female empowerment group that I have at work. And when she was wrapping it up and kind of saying what her mantra was, she flipped that on its head and said, I want to revamp that into everything happens for a purpose. And I have thought of that so much over the last, year and change since she came and she spoke with us. Because, everything happens for a reason can feel very passive, right?
Right.
Because that's
out of your control. Yeah. If you didn't have any way of changing.
That's often what people will say to you when it is something sad. So to go back to your question, it's like, oh, something sad happened. Well, everything happens for a reason. And then you'll just feel sad about it. But what I really liked about it's my friend June who said that is purpose is an activator. So the way that you can look at it, and to go back to your question, now when I reflect back on those opportunities that I didn't get or something didn't work out or the door closed, it was an activator to something else. Because when I look at my full career now, I have no regrets about it. Every single move, every single pivot has had value. And that includes the opportunities where it's like, hey, I really felt like that was a sure thing. It didn't work out. And I was forced to pivot. All of that has contributed immense value. So I had to shout out June first, just in saying that, everything happens for a purpose. That is by June Lopez. And I stand by that so firmly because I think it really helps in those scenarios. Yeah. But to pivot back to Chris Fhram, because that's who the question was about, my mom was that person, when my first real, thing where I absolutely felt like I had the job. I was 22 and I was like, yes. And it actually was at my agency that I worked at, who I W promote, very much credit them with the foundation for my career. Fantastic. But when I first applied there, it was for an account manager role. It wasn't for an SEO role. And I really thought that I nailed the interview process. So I was like, yes. And at the time I was very anxious to get into, a new position. And then I didn't get it. And I remember my mom, again, it was kind of a bummer. I found out on a Saturday night that I didn't get it. And my mom, of course, I'm there maybe on my point too. And she just told me, and I think this is really, really good advice for anybody. It's number one, you never know. I would say the vast majority of the time, you don't really know why you didn't get something. You just kind of find out
True.
Hey. And so she brought up to me, it's it could have been that they hired someone internally. You never know who the other person might have been. You never know. The job also could have just gone off the market. You don't know. So the one thing you are in charge of is, did I give my best? And if you gave your best, there's nothing to get hung up on. And that was what she told me. Like, do you think that you gave your all to that interview process? And I said, yes. And she was like, then you have nothing to feel bad about, because you can't change what the result was. So I would say that, just in terms of like not throwing it back on yourself, is really important, because there oftentimes are just so many mechanisms that are working, in the other area that like you have no control over. So just really using your mind in an effective way, in that way. But also, just in general, the other thing she said was, don't count this company out. You don't know, there could be another opening, because I think it can be really easy in the moment to just feel like, oh my God, well, they don't love me. Exactly. Like, to make yourself feel better. It's like, oh, okay, well, if they don't want me, they don't deserve, like, whatever. Yep. And I think it's very easy to feel that way. But my mom was adamant. She was like, you don't know. This one didn't work out. Why don't you keep your eye on it? And, if you love this company, and I did, I really felt connected to the company, there could be another opening. And in less than 2 months, there was. And it was an SEO role. So I always marvel at that, because if I had been an account manager there, my entire career may not have happened.
Different direction, yeah.
And, instead, that role did open up. It was, as an SEO specialist, and my boss there really took a chance on me. I was green as heck, Andrew McClellan, and I still credit him so much, because he saw something in me. And that's where my whole world opened up. So I think it's really important, that struck from Chris Fhram, like, to obviously not burn bridges, and just keep in mind, even if one opportunity doesn't work out, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be another avenue, and to really stay resilient in those types of periods. And honestly, we all just want to have those connections, and, see which road actually does make the most sense. So you might be surprised sometimes which one that is.
No doubt.
So that struck from Chris Fhram, and it was really good advice. It was really good advice.
And you are so fortunate to have Chris in your life, obviously. And it's so nice of you to share that story, because I think it's so important to share stories of individuals in our lives who are illuminators, people who bring out the best in any situation, regardless of what the current outcome or scenario is. And that's why I really appreciate that story. I think it's so valuable to our listeners and the SEOs that are out there looking for new jobs or new opportunities, roles, right? Because not everyone is going to work out perfectly.
Yeah, and I really can't stress enough, because it's so easy to beat up on yourself when you're going through like the process. And, I get nice like comments from different people, but I always remind folks, like, I didn't land my dream job right out of school, like not even close. And, everybody has those moments. And I think it's so crucial for your own like self-preservation to not like lump all of that back on yourself. Like, if you're giving your all, because I do know that the job market is really hard right now. And it's like, if you're giving your all to the interview process, like, that's all you can do. And I'm rooting for you. And, resilience is everything. And yeah, I think we can absorb so much of it as humans, because it's just kind of like human nature. But yeah, I mean, that would be my one thing. And my mom has always really encouraged me with that. You have to just keep forging that path forward,
Awesome. And that wraps up this episode of the Voices Search podcast. A huge thank you to Louisa for her stories and her great inspiration. What an illuminator in the SEO community. If you'd like to learn more about Louisa, you can find a link to her LinkedIn profile in our show notes, or visit our company website, espn.com.
Yes, please.